Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of the Concho Sports Show. I am Shay Harris, coming to you from Concho Sports Network World Headquarters in San Angelo, Texas, aka the wool and mohair capital of the world. Wow. And as usual, I'm here with my co-host Vince Salazar. How you doing, man?
Doing good, man. I think that's probably the first time I've ever heard that name for the capital for San Angelo. So, you learn something new every day. So I'm glad to add that to my repertoire, as they say.
Yeah, a lot of sheep, a lot of goats. All right, and before we get started, real quick, I want to thank our sponsor, Wingstop on Knickerbocker Rd in San Angelo. In my opinion, they do have the best wings in town, so if you want some wings, give them a call. You can get pickup, or they'll even deliver it to you. Also want to remind everybody to follow us on social media at Concho Sports. It's a good way to keep up with everything we're doing as far as our content, videos, and broadcasts just like this one. So if you like what we do, give us a follow and keep up to date with everything. All right, Vince, you have anything interesting for us today?
Oh, not really a whole lot going on so far. This week, of course, in professional league, we have the NFL having their draft. The biggest thing with that'll be the first virtual draft ever done for them. I've heard they have a few hiccups with it, but you're going to have that when you completely shift from what was a in-person experience to a virtual experience. So we'll see how that goes. We had the women's NBA do their draft not too long ago, the virtual draft, where we saw some pretty interesting things, really outstanding things. We had, of course, a really great tribute to Kobe Bryant and his daughter, who sadly passed away earlier this year in that horrible helicopter accident. But, we saw a lot of great young ladies who are going to continue on their careers playing at multiple places. I believe Dallas had the third draft picked overall, one young lady from Oregon. And I think for my hometown here, Waco, Texas, the Baylor Lady Bears at least had a top 10 with Lauren Cox, who will be playing also at that higher level. So really not a whole lot going on this week, but still just enough to kind of keep us entertained. So it should be a fun week coming up now to see what happens.
Absolutely. And the other bit of news that kind of came out over the weekend since the last time we were on is that the state football 7-on-7 for high school has been canceled. No state qualifying tournaments, no state tournament. So that is kind of a big deal, just because, especially for passing teams like Lakeview and Central, who throw the ball around a lot, that's going to have a big effect on their development, just because they use that as part of their off-season development to get receivers and quarterbacks kind of in sync, and it's good for defensive backs too. And so that's a little bit of football we might have had over the summer that we're not going to have. So now I guess we need to just turn our eyes on the fall and hope that everything goes okay, so we can have all of our fall sports like football and volleyball, start on time without a hiccup. So I guess we will see what happens with that. All right.
Absolutely.
And now it's time to go ahead and bring on our guest, Coach Brian Blackburn, the head coach of the Wallhawks basketball team. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Shay and Vince, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. And a round of applause. Wow, that's awesome.
Yes. Yeah, we actually have a huge studio audience that came to show up for us today.
So yeah,
excited
absolutely.
to see you. All right, so Coach, you do a great job there at Wall, and it's a great program. First of all, how are you, with all this craziness with the coronavirus stuff, how are you and your family doing with everything?
Everything's really, really good. It took some acclimating, obviously, and it's really tough being a coach and teacher when you have no athletes. But as far as my family goes, it's been really, really nice, and there are definitely some positives of this. One of them is I'm spending more time with my family. I have 4 young kids and a wife at home, and so we're able to spend a lot of time together, and obviously being able to slow down and maybe count our blessings and recognize that God is working in our lives. And I think some of those things are positives that I wouldn't have maybe necessarily taken notice of and maybe taken for granted if we didn't have this time together. So, and then obviously there's a lot of things for coaches that are going on. Something like this, with the virtual podcast, virtual coaches clinics, and anything like that is also great. That maybe some things that weren't available 5 weeks ago that people are trying to do now.
Well said with all of that. And that's what you mentioned there, things like more family time, something I've seen a lot of coaches on these kind of interviews that have been popping up all over the place talk about, kind of a blessing in disguise, because coaches are always so busy, put in a ton of hours, so they don't always get the family time that they want a lot of times.
Yeah, no, it's been really good, and it's obviously extremely exhausting. My wife's job at home with those kids is way my job up here, and so
Right.
I'm starting to feel her pain a little bit in regards to the lack of sleep and the exhaustion that comes from chasing, four kids around.
Yeah, and I want to really dig into your basketball program and how things went this past season, and maybe an early look at next year. But first, I want to kind of let everybody kind of get to know you a little bit. I know you kind of grew up, played high school basketball at Lavernia down by San Antonio, and you were coached by your dad. Talk a little bit about that and how that kind of led you to where you are now.
Well, he definitely held me back. I would have been a much better player if he coached me. But no, it was a great experience. Growing up at Lavernia, my dad coached there for 25 years, and so it was the only school that I knew. It was a great opportunity to grow up. Got to play basketball, from first grade basically all the way up with guys that I grew up with, and so it was a great opportunity. And one thing about playing for my dad, he never brought it home. If I brought it up, then we talk about it. But my mom had a very strict rule that my dad was not allowed to coach me at home. And same thing went for my younger brother. My younger brother was more of a football player. He was about 6'3", about 230, and played defensive end. And same thing, unless he brought it up, there was no basketball talk, no football talk. And so my brother and I were the ones that had to bring that stuff up. And so it was a great opportunity to grow up and be in that environment. It was a smaller school, similar to Wall in some is, and had a great opportunity to play with some really good players in AAU basketball in San Antonio, and eventually was able to walk on at Texas A&M University and play there. And so, another great opportunity to learn and grow, and as a future coach, that was really beneficial for my growth.
And you mentioned getting to walk on at A&M, and you were a heck of a player in high school. I think you were all-state there at Lavernia, had a lot of success, which I guess gave you that opportunity. And I did read an article, I think from 2007, about you at A&M, and you were a part of some really good teams there under Coach Gillespie, top 10 teams, and there was talk about you, as a guard helping with the scout team, and you were kind of like another coach on the court. It sounded like getting your team prepared for all the really strong opponents y'all were playing.
Yeah, no, it was a great opportunity, and like I said, as a future head coach, it was an opportunity. Some guys that coached us, Buzz Williams was an assistant, Coach Gillespie, who's back to being a Division I head coach, Alvin Brooks, who's the first assistant at U of H, Steve Forbes, who is the coach at East Tennessee State. You have Jerrance Howard, who's an assistant at Kansas now. I mean, our were awesome. Jeremy Cox, who's an assistant at Stephen F. Austin. We just had unbelievable coaches. And so I got to learn from all of those guys. And, it was kind of like a master's class almost in how to coach. And so, being on the scout team, I kind of knew my role. I played more my junior year than senior year because we recruited so well. And so I didn't get to play that much my senior year, but it was still a great opportunity. We were the number 6 team in the nation. We made it to the Sweet 16, and just an unbelievable, opportunity to learn and grow. And some of those guys that I played with are still my best friends, guys that I do. And so, yeah, it was a great opportunity, and it was kind of the perfect storm, perfect timing, because A&M basketball up to that point wasn't that good. And in those 3 years, we really made some big-time strides.
Yeah, and talk about who are some of the really great players that people watching would know that were on those A&M teams.
Yeah, so Law was the point guard of the year in the nation. He'd won the Bob Cousy Award. And so AC Law was an unbelievable college player, and he was the first-round pick in the NBA draft. Then you had Josh Carter. Josh Carter was an unbelievable three-point shooter, and he ended up playing overseas. Donald Sloan was a freshman. But he played in the NBA for 5 or 6 years, and he's still playing professionally. Then we had Joseph Jones was from a small high school, but Joe had an unbelievable college career as well. Antanas Kavalauskas, AK, was from Lithuania, and he played in the Olympics for Lithuania. Honestly, we had 12 guys, 15 guys on our team, and 9 of those guys ended up playing professionally in the Olympics or in the
Wow.
NBA. So, I mean, we just had a big-time group of guys that really developed and grew and kind of just worked really hard, and the opportunities were available.
Yeah, Coach, I was going to ask you, you said you grew up a lot, of course, in San Antonio, probably one of the biggest areas in the state of Texas where we see so many great basketball players come out of. Tell us a little bit about, growing up playing in that area, the kind of competition you had to go through against some of those guys out there.
Yeah, so I guess my road was a little bit unique in that I grew up about 15 miles from East Central High School, and when I was growing up, East Central, they were the number 1 team in the state, and their point guard was Stan Bonowitz, and they went 35-0 and won the state tournament. They won the state championship by like 20 points. I mean, they were unreal, and they ran and pressed, and their point guard was Stan, and Stan was left-handed, and his dad was the coach, and so I wanted to be Stan. And it's kind of funny because I was just on a Zoom meeting with Stan last week, so it's kind of funny. But as a left-handed point guard, I wore number 15 because of Stan, and I wanted to be that guy. And so I had a lot of opportunity to play against really, really good players growing up, not necessarily my age, but just playing that area. And the best pickup games in San Antonio at the time were at Incarnate Word College. And so some of the pro players would go out there, and some of the college guys, and UTSA. And so, yeah, getting a chance to play against those guys. And then by the time I was a junior in high school, I was playing AAU basketball, and the guys that I were playing with were from Converse Judson and John Jay High School, who won a state championship. And so getting a chance to play with and against those type of guys was obviously invaluable. And I didn't know any better. Like, I just went and hooped. Like, I knew I was one of the shorter guys, but at the same time, the guys on my team had a lot of confidence in me, and the coaching staff that I played for in AAU had a lot of confidence in me. And it was just a great opportunity because, like, some of those guys, maybe it wasn't as fresh and new to them. And so getting a chance to play against people that were Division I players and going and playing at AAU Nationals at Disney World, that was just an unbelievable, experience for me, and it allowed me to kind of get out of my comfort zone, but at the same time really grow as a player.
Yeah, definitely a big experience for you there, Coach.
And before we start talking about your team, your season this past season, talk a little bit about your coaching philosophy as far as your overall philosophy and what you like to do on offense and defense, things like that.
Yeah, so this is something that obviously is kind of unique with coaching. Whenever you have like a culture or core values or whatever you want to call them, they're always growing and developing. And so since I've been at Wall, we've kind of used there's 4 things that are really important in our program. The first one is passion. We want our guys to play with a lot of emotion and have passion. The second one is servant leadership. And so that's something that we, off the court, there's some things in the community that we want to try to do. And so we host a basketball night with the Hawks, where all the little kids that play, city league and rec league, youth ball, can come and play knockout and play with our players. And so servant leadership is a big deal. Thankfulness. We want to be thankful for every opportunity. We want to see every opportunity as a gift. And so we want to be thankful to our teachers, to other coaches, to our parents. And so those are things that we want to do and show thankfulness. And then finally is, and I think defensively, that's kind of where we show that. We're a very heavy man-to-man defensive team. And whether that's in the full court or the half court, we like to be like a tough defensive team. And I think that kind of shows in our culture and how we win games. Sometimes low scoring, but we do a great job defensively, trying to really lock up the other team defensively.
Very cool. And so let's talk about this past season, and just I think you've been here for how many seasons? About 6, 7 seasons.
Right. Yeah. Just finished our 6th year.
6th year. Okay. So, and you inherited a really strong program, and which isn't a surprise because, Wall athletics is always really good. So you had that advantage for sure, but you just kept things going. And this past season was a little different. I think you had a really young team, and they started slow. I think 5-12, and then you just were on fire from that point. So talk about the young team you had and how they developed over the course of the season.
Yeah, it was a unique situation. I've been really lucky, and Coach Williams, our athletic director, and Mr. Stoughton, Mr. Dacey, our administrators, they kind of just let us, and I think I can speak for all the head coaches, they just let us run our programs the best way we see fit. And so, coming in, I was taking over a team that had graduated a bunch of guys, and we had some really hungry seniors my first year at Wall, and they led us to the regional tournament. And then after that first year, I really knew we were going to be really, really good, and we made 2 trips to the regional tournament. And so the first 3 years, we made the regional tournament 3 times. And then the 2 years after that, my 4th year and my 5th year at Wall, we won 30 games. And so this was a unique situation in that we had 9 new varsity players. And so that was really, really tough early on because we didn't scheduling easy at all. We scheduled really, really tough. And so it was hard, for me as a coach, and our program has had so much success, is we were starting over in some areas and we had to really be patient, and that was tough at times. But our guys were super, super resilient. Like, they just were tough, and they knew it was going to be tough at times and hard to win games, and we just had to kind of weather the storm, and our guys just kept growing. And it was really, really fun as a coach for me to see, and our coaching staff, Coach Rodriguez and Coach Bond, to see our guys really develop and grow, not just mentally and on the court, but with a young team. After Christmas, our guys actually looked different. Like, they were taller, they were more muscular, and it was just crazy to see the development physically, mentally, emotionally, and on the court that our team made. And I think we ended up winning 14 of our last 16 games. And then we ran into a really, really hot team in the playoffs, and they played really well, and it wasn't one of our better games. And so in the playoffs, when you don't play well, you're not going to be successful. But as a whole, like, when you look at this season, we had 1 senior, Lex Dushek, and Lex was defensive MVP in our district, and he was all West Texas. And as a post player, he was kind of the glue to our team, and everybody really looked to him. But, next year we have 10 guys returning. And so that's kind of a unique situation to have 10 guys that have varsity experience coming back, and then also some young players in our JV and our freshman team's winning district as well. So it's kind of neat to kind of and also have the success that we did this year. You asked about offensively. One thing that was different for us offensively is we shot a ton of threes this year. We had some really, really good shooters. Austin Williams is a junior. He'll be a senior next year. He had 92 threes. Jacob Richardson, who is our girls coach's son, Coach Kevin Richardson. Jacob had a great season as a sophomore and made a lot of threes. We had another sophomore, Jacob Felger, who was a lights-out three-point shooter. And so it was kind of fun to play that style because we really hadn't done that in the past.
Cool. And you did win district again. You had gone 3 seasons without even losing a district game, 3 undefeated seasons in a row, and TLCA finally got you in a close one this year, and then you got your revenge a little bit later. I think you beat them by about 20 points. So talk about your district and the district season and some of the good teams and how hard it is to get through that without losing a game.
Well, it's something that we really didn't think of coming into this year, but when it happened, when TLCA beat us, it was like, oh man, it's this is a different feeling. And so it was from a coach's perspective. Now looking at, while we're sitting around in quarantine, it was good for our team. It really was, because it kind of refocused us. At the time, obviously, it wasn't that much fun, and obviously it was tough to handle. But there are great players all around San Angelo, really good players and good teams, and when you don't play your best, anybody can. And one thing to think about with our new district is the district that we have next year. There's 8 teams in our district, and 7 of those 8 teams made the playoffs in their previous districts this year. And so the level of competition is definitely going to ramp up in regards to district basketball next year. And I think it'll be fun to play different people. And that just kind of shows you, there's good basketball everywhere. And our district is now, going to be one of the tougher ones.
Yeah, you must be pretty excited now, with that kind of competition and coming in with a team that has so many guys coming back and all of a sudden have a lot of experience now. So it's going to be pretty exciting to see what you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our players are excited too. It's kind of funny because I was telling our principal, Mr. Snowden, earlier today, it's strange having this spring where you're really not doing anything. You don't know what's going on. It's so different and unique. But as a basketball coach, I'm having an opportunity to reach out to my guys, and if they're bored, they can always just go outside and shoot on their hoops. And so that's kind of nice to know that, man, if a player is bored, I had one just text me, Blaine Foster, number 11 for us. Blaine texted me just recently, said, "Hey, Coach, are we allowed to get into the gym?" And I was like, "No, you can't. You're not allowed to get in." I said, I'm sure at some point during this quarantine, someone's going to try to break into the gym and try to get in there, just because like people are going to be going crazy. It's going to turn into the purge. I don't know, but I think guys can still always go out on their driveway and dribble around and shoot, and so that's kind of reassuring as a basketball coach.
Yeah, and that reminds me, it makes me wonder, how are things different now? Like, what would your off-season be looking like right now, at the end of April? And then how does that compare with what you're having to do now and how you're having to communicate with players and what you're having them do kind of on their own now?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's very different. At Wall in the spring, almost every one of our players is playing a sport. And so we have a lot of guys in golf, tennis, baseball, track, UIL, and they're all involved in something, stock shows. And so I almost have no gym time with our guys. They can come in on their own and shoot, but they're all really super involved. And so as a coach, it's definitely my downtime. And so from that perspective, I enjoy seeing my guys every day, but it's probably harder for them than it is for me this time of year, just because they're used to being active and playing in a sport. So in regards to communication, I think Zoom is a big way to communicate with guys, just talking to them face-to-face, kind of like we're doing. We also use an app called Sports U, and it's great for teams. If there are coaches that are going to watch this, I may have to pay coaches to watch this. I don't know if this is probably going to take away from your audience having me on here, but Sports U app is really, really good. So what I'm doing as a coach is I'm putting workout videos from pro trainers. I'm putting some motivational quotes. I'm giving them workouts, and so I'll put a file on there that has different workouts for the guys. And so that's kind of how we're keeping in touch. And then also one thing that I've started working on is highlight videos of this past season. And so I'll put some highlight videos on there with some cool music in the background, and maybe they'll watch that and that'll get them excited to maybe want to get out there and shoot around or something.
Very cool. One of the really cool things, I think, is that you actually have your own website, coachbrianblackburn.com. It has a lot of good information on it about you and your history, and then also kind of your coaching philosophy and things like that. Talk about, when did you get started with your website, and what made you decide to do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I must have been bored. It was definitely before we had 4 kids, I can tell you that. So it was we used that program to create our basketball website, which we used for a little bit. And so once I got used to using that program, I just thought it'd be nice to kind of do like maybe to give young coaches, if they wanted something to look at, or maybe if they had a question about my philosophy or something about our offense or our defense or previous coaching clinics that I've spoken at. And so I thought that was just a good way to kind of put all of that together in one spot. And so I don't use it a ton, and it probably needs to be updated. I'm kind of embarrassed that you found that and saw it actually. So I need to probably update it. But it was just something that I thought I could use maybe to collaborate with other coaches. And I think now maybe with the current climate, it might be something that I send out to coaches to try to maybe talk to them a little bit. And I also used it, and you'll probably mention this, is the podcast that I do. It's a way for me to reach out to a coach if if I don't know them personally, I can say, hey, here's some things about me. And so it's been nice to have. I haven't used it. And so if I totally, exit off the internet after we're done with our interview here, you'll know why. But no, I think it's been something maybe different and something fun that I've put together.
Well, I guess we'll see now if you get a big jump in visitors now. You can go
Yeah, no
at
doubt.
the
No doubt.
analytics or whatever and see.
Sure.
Although maybe 3 or 4 more extra people would have watched this episode.
Well, yeah, you and Vince have looked at it, and so that's like doubled my total number of people who've seen it. So
well, glad to help out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, now we got to ask about the podcast that you mentioned. Tell me how long have you been doing it, and how did you get started? I know you're about to be at your 100th episode, I think, which is really cool.
Yeah, so that started like 4 years ago, and for me, I'm a big podcast listener. Like, I love listening to podcasts. I'll listen to religious podcasts, and I'll listen to leadership podcasts. I'll listen to ebooks. I'm an auditory learner, so I learn by listening. And so that kind of sparked my interest in using hardwoodtexas.com, which is a website for basketball coaches around the state, and just reaching out to the guy that runs that website and saying, hey, is that something you'd be interested in me doing? And he's like, yeah, I'll pay you a little bit for it. And so I was like, oh yeah, let's do this. And so what I did was I basically just reached out to coaches that I knew, and whether I was in the Dallas area or growing up in San Antonio, and using Coach Lombard, and people that he knew when he was coaching here. It was basically a mini clinic for me every time I talked to a coach. And so I just basically compiled notes, and while I was listening to them, and I'll tell you this, being a guest on a show like this is much more difficult than hosting it. And hosting it, I can ask the questions and kind of direct things. You never know what someone that you have on the podcast is going to say. And so it was really unique, and I enjoyed doing it. Now that we're at our 100th episode, I'm kind of cutting that off, and I think 100 is enough. But like I said, it was a mini clinic for me. I got to know some coaches around the state and around the nation a little bit better, and it was just really cool to reach out to those coaches and keep in touch with some of them. And like I said, it was a mini clinic for me, so I probably learned as much as anybody doing those things, and made a little money doing it. And I just, like I said, I just really enjoyed having that conversation with coaches.
Awesome. I mean, like I said, when I was talking to you before, to ask if you wanted to come on the show, you seem like one of the more tech-savvy coaches I've seen, which you were, I don't know if you agree with that, but there aren't that many high school coaches that have their own website and their own podcast. It's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. Hopefully that makes me stick out in a good way, and it's something
Absolutely.
that I can use to help other people. And the big thing as a high school coach is trying to find different ways maybe to promote your players. And so with all this downtime, I can maybe use those things to help promote my players that want to play college basketball, or just like seeing videos. I'm sure you guys as former athletes and involved in sports, you love watching highlights of yourself, or seeing highlights of people, and so hopefully I can use those things to promote our players.
Well, I mean, there weren't a whole lot of highlights of myself, and it was it was a long time ago too. So they don't exist anymore anyway, even if there were any. But,
yeah, I think for me, yeah, more of my peers. That's definitely the one I look at more.
What do you got, Vince? Any questions?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Coach, when it comes to college basketball, I mean, this year has probably been, the ending it came to was one of the strangest I've ever seen. I've never seen March Madness canceled. We saw, I think, really only the Big Ten Conference and the ACC were the only two that were able to actually get their conference tournaments going. What did the current coronavirus, how did it exactly play out on all these college sports that we've known and loved for so long, to finally see them actually just kind of stop right on a dime?
Yeah, I think a lot of it had to do with what the NBA did and what pro sports was doing, and I think everybody kind of followed suit. It was interesting for me. I was sitting in the bleachers at the state basketball tournament and watching a game, and then on the big screen it comes up, after this session, the state tournament is canceled. And it's just like, what? It was just totally surreal because Texas, wasn't really hit bad at the time with COVID-19. It was mostly in the, and so to see all those things happen and the domino effect, at the time, I don't know about you guys, but I really didn't know what was going on. Like I had to do a bunch of research and I had heard of the virus and knew where it was originated and all this, but I didn't know it was going to have this type of impact. And so, yeah, I think initially, I think a lot of people were upset and frustrated and confused. But at this point, looking back on it, it was about a month ago. I think everybody was like, yeah, that was definitely the right decision. And we still have a ways to go, but we're on the right track. And so it was unique, and hopefully we can get it where it doesn't happen again. But I still don't think we're in the clear. I think there's some things that have to be answered before we can start up sports again.
Yeah, for sure about that, Coach. I told Shay on our first ever episode, that was the weirdest thing for me was I was here at home for spring break watching the Mavericks play. And it was during, I think, the third quarter when they announced the player from the Utah Jazz contracting COVID-19. And then from there, after the Maverick game, that was going to be the suspension for the season. I was like, wow, we've hit a new area where we've actually seen something shut down sports entirely. So, I mean,
Right.
it's just been a big shock for all of us. One guy I wanted to ask you about, Coach, of course, I noticed that you had a chance to coach was Marcus Smart, a guy who went on from high school to play at Oklahoma State, did phenomenal there, moved on there to play with the Boston Celtics. Sadly, he's been one of the players afflicted with COVID-19. Thankfully, he's doing so much better now. He's getting a lot healthier. So tell us a little bit about him if you could, Coach.
Yeah, first off, Marcus, unbelievable competitor. And, one thing that he's done since he's contracted the coronavirus is he's giving, medical doctors his blood and his plasma, and he's allowing them to monitor him. And so, just someone who understands the gravity of the situation, like Marcus, wants to help. And so doing those things, I think, is really, really neat. He recently posted a video talking to all Texas high school athletes saying, hey, hang in there, keep your head up. I know it's rough, but we'll get through this, and so, Marcus is someone who understands, what's going on. He kind of gets it. And some professional athletes don't, but Marcus gets it. And as a coach, super competitive. All he wanted to do was win. You think about someone who was picked number 6 in the NBA draft, only averaging 13.9 points a game in high school. He just wanted to win. He did whatever it took to win. And so unbelievable team player, unbelievable athlete. He could guard anybody. He could dunk on anybody. In the state championship game, his junior year, he took 5 charges. And his senior year, he had games where he was, the best defensive player, the best rebounder, the best defensive rebounder, had the most assists. And so just from that standpoint, Marcus is someone who has unbelievable intangibles. And it's not shocking to me that the Celtics can't get rid of him. Like he is someone, he has all those intangibles, and he was in the running for the defensive player of the year this year before the NBA season kind of was brought to a screeching halt. And so I really, really enjoyed coaching him. And obviously in his career, his competitiveness has gone over the edge at times. I'm not surprised at that, but that doesn't take away from who he is as a competitor and how bad he wants to win and everything. And he's an extremely strong person. He lost his older brother, and he lost his mother, and he's a fighter, and I love him. And I text him, and when he texts me back, it's always, I love you, Coach. And he's someone who, I want my players to model their competitiveness after him.
Yeah, that's awesome, Coach. Like you mentioned, a fantastic player. Boy, he was a big addition to the Boston Celtics, I think, for sure. Building around him, they could really find a way to be a big-time competitor in the East. So definitely a fun one. So I know for sure we did not have March Madness like mentioned, but I got to ask you, Coach, we kind of don't know. It's up in the air. But for you, who would have been your favorite to take home the title this season?
Man, it seems like so long ago now. I don't even
That's crazy.
So I loved watching Davidson play, but Davidson, I think they're maybe one of those teams that could make it to the Sweet 16, but they'd have to upset some people. So Davidson, they probably wouldn't win it. Kansas was playing really well. Dayton, had the best player. Dayton was playing really well. I thought Baylor, I throw it out to your boys. Baylor was a tough team. Shay's like, no way.
They're good.
And then Gonzaga. So if I had to give a Final Four, I would say Baylor, Kansas, Gonzaga, and Dayton would have been my Final Four.
Oh, wow.
So I know that didn't answer your question, but I think those four teams would have been the Final Four. As always, like after the first 2 days, my bracket is shot. I mean, I think last year was the worst I've ever done. I think I only got like half of the first round games right, which is crazy to think about. I mean, as someone who prides myself on watching college basketball and kind of knowing these teams and seeing them play, and you still only get half of the games right. I mean, it just goes to show you it is March Madness for sure.
Yeah, it's been a long, long time since I had even a bracket come close to staying over half. So it's been, yeah, I agree with you there, Coach. With for example, since you're so close with Wall, close to San Angelo, I was curious, what do you look at right now when you look at the Angelo State Rams and Bells and what they've done with their basketball programs? I know it's awkward for them because they were going into playoff play in the NCAA regionals, but now that was kind of up in the air. But what do you see from them, Coach?
Yeah, well, the first thing that I think is really, really neat about what Angelo State has done is the type of players that they can bring in from the Division I level, or JUCO for that matter. And so I think the dynamic of the team and how Coach Boone and Nate build their teams is really, really neat. I don't think everybody's getting to do that. And so the facilities are great. You have a really, really big fan base for Division II, and you're in one of the best conferences in the nation. And so to see that, I think it's been really, really neat. And Nate with the girls has done something pretty cool where he's had these high school girls, like Sawyer, who came in from Wall, and then these girls that have transferred in, and has been able to really build a program and kind of that dynamic. And then Cinco on the men's side, these guys come in and they're grown men. Like these do play, and they can play at any level. And so the fact that he's got grown men out there playing and their style of play is really fun. I know they had some injuries and some things off the court they had to deal with this year, but I think it fits perfect. And the continuity of those programs it's for long-term success. It's not just here, we're going to be good. Their ability that Coach Reed and the athletic department at Angelo State has allowed them to build their programs is something that's going to last a while.
Yeah, absolutely, Coach. I mean, it's been fun to watch them play. They've been growing for quite a while. I still remember when Coach Beard was there and then Coach Cinco took over. Right. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun out there at ASU. Probably for my last question for you, Coach, of course, whether it be as a player or coach, what's probably one of the most memorable moments that stand out to you the most?
Man, that's a tough one. As a player, there's a couple things. High school wise, my senior year we had a really good team, and so just playing that season and going through the playoffs with my friends, there were some really cool moments there. As a college player, winning at Rupp Arena against Louisville right there down the road in the second round was really special, and then being able to play in the Sweet 16 in San Antonio. As a coach, coaching at Bryan High, we had a really, really good program there, and just what I learned there just over the 3 years that I coached with Coach Reese and for him. We had a freshman player score 40 points in a varsity game, and so his first game was really special. That doesn't happen very often. And then obviously at Marcus, playing in the state tournament, it was still in Austin, and so being able to do that and win there. And then my first head coaching job at White High School, my first game as a head coach, just the difference in being a head coach and an assistant, how nervous I was, even though it was 2A and it was a game in November that, really didn't matter, but I was so nervous. I was more nervous to coach my first varsity game as a head coach than I ever was as a player. It was way more nerve-wracking as a coach. And then, coming to Wall, there's a lot of great memories. And anytime that we have a senior night, I think it's special. This year we only had one senior, but having a senior in his last home game, that's always special and emotional. And so each of those 6 senior nights, our senior ball, I think, is something that kind of sticks out. And then the opportunity to win playoff games. Anytime you win a playoff game, it's special too. So I think all of those things are things that stick with me, and I hope I can, have pictures and memories and write things down before I, lose my sanity and lose my fact. I can always look back at those things and say, hey, yeah, those were great memories.
Yeah, absolutely.
A couple of days ago, the 90 Chicago Bulls documentary, The Last Dance, was released. Have you had a chance to watch any of that yet?
Oh, yeah. And if I could watch that 5 times by now. But no, I watched the first 2 episodes, and it was one of those where my kids had already gone to bed, and so my wife and I were sitting there watching it. And after the first one, episode 1, she's like, that was it? That was the fastest hour we've had since the quarantine started. And so, watching those 2 really neat. And it's kind of funny because now I think as sports guys, you guys can relate to this. We almost have something to look forward to every Sunday night now that we can, I hope this week goes by fast so we can watch The Last Dance. And so that's kind of fun. And I'm glad ESPN was able to release it earlier than they wanted.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I remember watching the Bulls in the 90s, and I was a huge fan, especially because I was a Spurs fan. So they had great teams, but, they never could get it done, until a little bit later. So I kind of latched myself onto the Bulls and Michael Jordan, and I see all the debates about who the best player is of all time. People were saying LeBron, whoever, but no, I got to go back to Michael Jordan.
Yeah, that's for me too. I was born in '92, so of course that was MJ's time, and before I knew anything about basketball, before I knew my favorite team was the Dallas Mavericks, but that was until way longer down the road. All I knew about prior to that was just Michael Jordan. Every time they said NBA, I thought, that's Michael Jordan. Or I thought Space Jam, because that was the first movie I ever saw. Of course, started Michael Jordan. So, yeah, for me, he's an absolute legend. You look at what he did at North Carolina, at Chicago. It's incredible. I still need to go and see the documentary. I sadly had some other stuff to do, so I didn't have a chance. So I need to catch up and quickly get to episode 1 before episode 2 comes out this Sunday. But, just a phenomenal guy. He's just great all around and just a fantastic role model for a lot of these young guys trying to get into the sport of basketball.
That's it. The debate, and I'll have this forever with my players now because all they've seen is LeBron play. LeBron was unbelievable. He is an unbelievable player, unbelievable athlete, unbelievable basketball player. He is one of the greatest. And I, as an old timer now, I still think Michael Jordan is the greatest. But guys that are 30 years older than me think that Bill Russell is the greatest, So whoever it is during your time, I will say this. When I was a senior in high school, we went to Disney World and we played at the AAU Nationals. Our first game was supposed to be against LeBron's AAU team, but he had broken his wrist. And I'm just thinking, I'm so grateful we didn't play those guys because that would, and I'm so grateful that YouTube and Twitter and all those things were not popular because I don't know how many times he probably would have dunked on me if we would have played that game. So, but no, one thing to think about with Michael Jordan is it's going to be interesting to see in 5 years. It's going to be interesting to see in 5 years or after LeBron retires, this debate, because it'll just get stronger, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. It's been great having you on, Coach. We really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. Before we let you go, I like to do kind of a few quick hitter questions just for fun, kind of learn a little bit more about you. So I'll start off with hopefully it's an easy one. Ford or Chevy?
Dodge.
Okay. I know Vince likes Dodge too. I mean, he likes Chevy. But
Yeah, so
I remember last week you said you liked Dodge also. So.
yeah, so I'm glad because last week we had Ford, so I'm glad you went out of the box there, Coach. That's good. Good answer. I'm with you on that one.
Those new Rams are really nice
Oh
that came
yeah.
out in 19, especially the inside is kind of like on another level from any of the other ones,
No
for
doubt,
sure.
no doubt.
And let's see, favorite sports movie. This one's usually tough.
Yeah, so Hoosiers
Oh, okay.
is my
All right,
number
good.
one, and then the second one would be Remember the Titans.
Good
So
answer.
those two are kind of in a league of their own
Yeah, I mean, I love
for
Hoosiers. I
me.
love the music, that plays like during the game scenes and everything. Easily one of my favorites. And then it just so happens that probably my favorite football movie is Rudy, which is also set in Indiana, Notre Dame, which uh, I'm sure my uncle, who's from Indiana, would love that. And speaking of basketball, he's all about Larry Bird, Larry Bird, Larry Bird, because he's from Indiana, of course. And
Yeah.
Bobby Knight, Bobby Knight.
Bobby Knight.
Uh, okay, Mavs, Rockets, or Spurs?
Spurs, definitely. Growing up in San
Yeah.
Antonio, I had no choice. I couldn't help it. And so, as a growing up, I played Spurs League basketball, and the Spurs had a deal where you could go to one of the rec centers at midnight and play basketball, and they'd have one of the Spurs deliver Pizza Hut pizza, and so you had midnight basketball with the Spurs, and so yeah, I was Spurs through and through, and man, the run that we had, from '99 till 2015 was, I mean, it was
Oh
it
yeah.
was awesome.
Yeah, I've always been a huge Spurs fan since I was a kid. I remember I actually went to games. I was young when I was the first games I went to were at Hemisphere Arena before they even moved into
Right.
the Alamo Dome. I remember going maybe to one or two there. And then, of course, lots of games at the Alamo Dome, playoff games. Big David Robinson fan. I have his rookie card.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I collected basketball cards, but it's been a long time, but I still have his rookie card. And,
Yeah, this year actually our team was able to play at the AT&T Center. So we played
oh,
before a
awesome.
Spurs game this year. And
Oh
so the
wow.
guys got to play on the court that the Spurs played on, and that night the Spurs played Golden State and won in overtime. So that was neat for our players to experience that, in that arena and get that unique experience playing on an NBA court. So I was glad our guys were able to do that, and I'm also glad it was the Spurs. So.
Oh, yeah. And let's see. Do you have a favorite hobby or leisure activity you like to do when you're not doing coaching stuff?
Man, I probably should get one. I mean, this, but no, I joke with people. I love five things: God, family, friends, food, and basketball. And so that's kind of it. With four kids at home, my hobby would be playing with them. And then after they go to sleep, my wife and I just hang out and we'll watch reruns of The Office or Parks and Rec and something funny to kind of get us toned down after a long day of chasing kids.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been watching through Parks and Rec. Like I hadn't seen it since the original run, and so I've been watching it over the last month or so.
And I
And
got The Office.
The Office, yeah. Actually, I watched through The Office kind of before that. Um, let's see. Let's talk about food then. You said food is one of your things. Barbecue or Mexican food. If you could only eat one the rest of your life, for me. This is the toughest question. Which would
This
it
is a
be?
tough one.
Yeah. Uh, well, am I supposed to say Wingstop since that's
That's an
the
acceptable answer. Yes.
no, since they're the sponsor, right?
All right.
Wingstop. No, I'm a big time barbecue guy, and one thing growing up in San Antonio, we'd go to Austin, and Austin, the barbecue
Oh
there,
yeah.
or Orlando and places like that. The barbecue is just legit, and one thing that's great about being in Texas, you can turn barbecue into Mexican food. You can put it in a tortilla. You can serve beans with it, and so I'm a big time barbecue guy, and yeah, if you have some good barbecue spots for me that you guys have experienced, send them my way because I'd love to take a stop and eat some good ribs and brisket.
Well, if you ever come back to Waco, Texas again here, Coach, Uncle Dan's barbecue, probably one of the best you'll have. Yeah, and from San Angelo to me, I love Pack Saddle. Pack Saddle is probably one of my most favorites to go out there to eat. So definitely a lot of good barbecue places.
No doubt. Yeah, one of my best friends in coaching coaches at Waco Midway. So if I go visit Matt Brown, I'll have to get some of that barbecue for sure.
Definitely. It's worth the stop.
So far, barbecue is 2 for 2. Last week, I asked Garrick Scott the same question, and he had to go with barbecue. And one more kind of a food question. Creamy or crunchy peanut butter? I don't know why I like to ask this question.
Yeah, creamy. I don't like to mess with my textures, so we'll go. Yeah, we'll go creamy. Sorry. How about you guys? What are y'all's?
Well, last week Garrick said the exact same thing about the texture. I said crunchy. Because I used to eat creamy peanut butter. Then one day I was like, I'm gonna try some crunchy, and then I like it. It's good.
Yeah, no,
but I don't eat peanut butter much anyway.
Yeah, no, I had to go with cream still. I had to go with the regular cream. I was like, no, I can't do crunchy. That's just, I can't do it.
I'm going to keep asking until somebody else says crunchy. So we'll see how long it takes. Okay, Coach. Thanks again. We really appreciate it. We were glad to have you on. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully we can have you on again sometime, maybe to preview next season once we get closer to that.
Shay and Vince, thanks, guys. Yeah, that'd be awesome. I appreciate you guys having me on, and hopefully this is kind of what you were hoping for in regards to a talk. And best of luck to you guys. This is really cool that you guys are doing this with Concho Sports Network, and best of luck growing the business.
Oh, thanks so much. We really appreciate that.
Coach.
All right. I'll talk to you later, Coach. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And that was Raw head basketball coach Brian Blackburn. Any closing thoughts, Vince?
Oh, it's just great to have Coach on here with us. He gave us a really good look at how his squad play, a little bit about himself. It's fantastic. I'm actually excited to see how well they'll do next year in the UIL. So, another great show, our third episode of the show, of our new show here on the network. So, of course, we'll be headed into the fourth one. So, once again, just kind of excited to see who we get next. It's been a fun last 2 weeks, 2 interviewees coming in. So, you never know who's going to stop on by for the next show.
Absolutely. It was another great show, and I want to thank you again, of course, for being here every week, and thank Coach Blackburn again. Also, I want to thank our sponsor, Wingstop. You can order from them, wingstop.com. They have an app you can order from, and you can call them at 227-6777 in San Angelo to get those orders. You can pick it up or have it delivered. And again, remind you, if you enjoy what we're doing, follow us on social media at Concho Sports. We'd really appreciate it. And we want to thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next week with another great guest.